Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Oh, Tony, we get to look forward to the student appreciation practice at Ohio State on Saturday. That's going to be a lot of fun. When do they do the media appreciation practice? I don't remember that on the schedule, but I'm sure it must be coming soon.
Tom, we're supposed to be appreciating the students. Don't make me angry at them, at these college kids. These no good college kids always making the noise with their rock music and whatnot. It is amazing. Once, and no offense to the students out there, but once I stopped being a college student and I graduated, I didn't want to have anything to do with college kids. Like when I was in college, I didn't want to have anything to do with these lousy high school kids. Like they're everybody younger than, hey, you cloud, everybody younger than me is just annoying, like significantly younger. And again, no offense, and none taken, I'm sure. But yes, we will be there on Saturday morning for the student appreciation practice. We've got some stuff to talk about. But Tom, before I get to any of that, I have a question for you. And this is a very important question. We haven't talked about this. Brent Musburger or Keith Jackson?
Keith Jackson. I love Brent Musburger. Brent Musburger's great. Keith Jackson. Keith Jackson was Brent Musburger before Brent Musburger. And, I feel like you never quite 100% replaced Keith Jackson. And then after Brent Musburger left, they never quite 100% replaced Brent Musburger either. And I don't know that you're necessarily going to have that kind of a voice moving forward in college football. Like, Chris Fowler's on a lot of the big games. I never once, if you put up a Chris Fowler versus Brent Musburger poll, it would be 107% for Brent Musburger. And Chris Fowler's like fine, but I just think there are so many more games on TV now that you're never going to have like that one guy who is the iconic voice of whatever it is. It's just, the big Ohio State games are on, 3-4 different channels now, and that's only going to be more true moving forward.
Yeah, Keith Jackson is a legend of all legends. I think my issue with him is that we saw his decline. His last few years were not very good compared to what he was for a very long stretch. Whereas Brent Musburger disappeared to the SEC network, so we didn't get to see that decline, and then to the satellite radio thing. So the decline was more stark with Keith, and when he'd get players wrong or whatever. Barn Childress, for instance, which goes way back. Bam Childress being read as Barn on the graphic or whatever. But I don't have any issue with people saying Keith Jackson because he is college football. Brent Musburger is television play-by-play. It's they did the same thing, but one is part of the fabric of the sport, and I think everybody can appreciate that. I do feel bad for these students. I will appreciate the students right now. They won't, like you said, there's no legend right now, because I was wondering who is the guy right now. Is it Gus Johnson? Is that maybe, some people would maybe say Vern Lundquist, but that he's no longer doing it. He kind of bridged the gap for a lot of people calling the SEC games, so maybe there was something there. I always say that the kids today, Tom, did not get to grow up and some of them have not gotten to grow up with the legendary baseball play-by-play guys that we got to grow up with. So I think they have missed out on that. And I don't know who the legends are right now. Gus Johnson, obviously, Kevin Harlan. Like there, you said there's just 1,000 guys out there now instead of 10.
Well, if you think about like the iconic moments from the last couple of years of Ohio State football, some of them have been on ESPN. The Notre Dame game was on NBC. The Michigan games have been on Fox. You're going to have, moving forward, you're going to have probably some of the big games on. They haven't done the draft yet for this season, so we don't know, the Ohio State-Oregon game, is that going to be on CBS or NBC or Fox or what? And now you've got more college football playoff games, which are going to be on ESPN. And so you're just going to be, your big moments are going to be divided between 4 networks. and more than 4 play-by-play crews probably. So it just feels like it's going to be harder to be that one guy in the way that, you mentioned baseball, like for the first 17 years of the Mets, it was just the same 3 guys doing TV and radio, and that was it. And they just kind of rotated between the booths. And they've had, the Mets have been very fortunate to have fantastic and really iconic announcers on TV and radio for the last, and they've basically been there for the last 25, 30 years there as well. But that is very much not the norm. Jason Benetti just jumped from the White Sox to the Tigers this offseason. He's considered one of the best announcers in the industry. There are not very many. Vin Scully was another person. I think you could say a lot of the same things about Vin Scully that you did about Keith Jackson. Iconic voice, was there forever, will forever be tied to the Dodgers. Last few years, you saw a little bit of a decline with him, but I think you're still, if you say Vin Scully, everyone's going to sort of smile, and it's, that iconic voice, and they're just, I don't know. I mean, I don't, Joe, maybe this is me being older and remembering Joe Buck when Joe Buck was like the new guy, but like Jack Buck his dad was an iconic St. Louis Cardinals radio announcer, and, Ozzie Smith hits the home run off of Todd Niedenfuer in the 1985 NLCS, and he's screaming, "Go crazy, folks." And he called those World Series and all that kind of stuff. And Joe Buck is just that is a disgraceful act thing when Randy Moss pretends to, like, I don't know. It doesn't, maybe this is me growing, being older and not looking back at people the same way, or maybe this is just like the new generation just can't quite do it the way the old ones do. I don't know, but it definitely feels like that across a bunch of sports, that Tony, it feels like everything's just getting slightly worse every year, doesn't it?
Especially music. Let me tell you about the kids today and the music that they're listening to, Tom. This rock music, I call it crap music. No. Yeah, everything changes, and it's always for the worse.
The music in the grocery stores, though, Tony, much better. They're playing the modern hits. They used to play the old people music in the grocery stores. Now, Tony, they're playing the tunes that I know and love.
You know what I love to do? I like to go listen to music in elevators. That's where it really hits home. But let's talk some Ohio State football, Tom. We spoke with some defensive linemen, some young defensive linemen, and some tight ends on Thursday, and I want to spend some time on the defensive line issues. Kinata Jackson, Kaden Curry, and Jason Moore in particular, starting with Kinata Jackson, who said he had some ups and downs last year. I think everybody would agree with that. There were some expectations, some high expectations for him, starting in the bowl prep of his true freshman season when he was redshirting, and then we see him in spring practice, and we just constantly see flashes of 97, like getting into the backfield. So there's some high hopes there. Didn't really come to fruition. He said, like I said, ups and downs. He did say he was kind of bummed or upset that he didn't play as much as he thought he should have, but also said that he never thought about transferring. And we had heard like he wasn't thrilled, and I'm sure we probably had a pre-written transfer portal story in there, but the fact that he went through that, Tom, and he is aware that there are still Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau ahead of him, like, what does that say that he came back and is aware of the situation in front of him?
Yeah, it feels like that was the time when, if you were going to get transfer, it was going to be the end of the season when you were frustrated about playing time, and now JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer are coming back, and, boy, if you were going to transfer because you weren't happy you weren't enough on the field enough, that would have been the time you wanted to do it. And, there are kind of two sides of the same coin here where, yeah, JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer coming back should make everyone else on the team feel like, hey, Jack Sawyer was kind of credited as being one of the leading people in terms of, rounding everyone up and getting to come back for another year. It should, you would think, if you're a younger player, you look up at them and you say, hey, these are guys who have been here longer, who are choosing to come back for a fourth year. Maybe that's not the worst thing in the world. Maybe you don't have to go pro automatically after 3 years. And, I'm sure everyone comes in with the mindset like, hey, I'm going to be there 3 years. I'm going to go turn pro. I'm going to get drafted in the first round, and I'm going to live happily ever after. that is, I mean, the reality is, of course, that can happen for everyone. And looking at them coming back and then being willing to come back himself, I think there's an assumption he's going to have a bigger role this year. Caden Curry's going to have a bigger role this year. All those guys are going to play more because there's going to be more snaps. There's going to be more opportunities. That we've talked a million times about the need to keep guys fresh and healthy over the course of the year. And, this is an opportunity for him to continue to improve his game, because there was stuff he did really well, and there was stuff that was like, yeah, I mean, he was still a redshirt freshman. Like, the redshirt freshmen are not usually going to be perfect in every aspect of the game. So continue to improve your technique, refine your game, get better, and then you'll, next year, JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer are gone. And, unless Kinata Jackson has like a complete breakout year, he probably comes back for one more year in 25. He's the starter. And then boom, then you're off to the NFL. And that's not such a bad thing.
Caden Curry was asked about this as well. Like, it's almost like, what are you still doing here? Like, what's your problem? Like, why are you still here? Didn't you see Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau came back? It's like he showed up for spring practice. And he's like, what are these guys still doing here? Like, and so what Caden Curry said, it's never been about chasing money for him. He said he wants to touch greatness, and he feels like Larry Johnson can get him there. So that's his focus. And I think we hear that from a lot of the defensive linemen, the utmost trust in Larry Johnson. And of course, talking to Larry Johnson, last week or so, or earlier in the week, when he's always asked about retirement, and he said, I will be up front with players and recruits. Like, I'm not going to leave anybody hanging. I'm not just going to out of the blue. Like, they will know when I'm going to retire. And these guys continue to get the reinforcement that Larry Johnson is going to be there for them and make them better. And so they're cool with that. And with Jason Moore, I asked him, how did you feel when Tyleik Williams came back? Because we always assume that these younger players, obviously they want to play. Yes, they want to play. And when a senior or a junior that could go to the NFL comes back, it's like, great. Now I'm even further away from playing time. And I'm writing about it today, but he said he was thrilled when Tyleik Williams came back because, for one, it gives him an opportunity to learn from Tyleik Williams for another year. And two, they want to win. So if anybody coming back to help them try to win, that is a win off field, win on the field, and that is something that they all want. And it's part of the culture and the mentality of everybody. But it's just interesting to see these young guys who, and Kinata Jackson wanted to play more and he didn't. Everybody wants to play more, but yet the real goal for most of these guys, and the real goal for everybody, you want to win, but like, these guys could have left. They didn't. So their goal is you want to win and you want to get coached by Larry Johnson. And if you can do both of those things at the same time, all the better.
Yeah, I mean, you have individual goals, you have team goals. That's true of pretty much everyone. That's true of high school players and college players and pro players and middle school players and youth players. Like, everyone has, you want to win, but you also have, you want to improve, you want to get better, you want to get ready for the next level. All of that kind of stuff is true of pretty much everyone. And, the opportunity to play for Larry Johnson, Larry Johnson was the first person I thought of when we talked about earlier in the week, the proposed rule that would allow coaches the coaching staff to expand, and then you can just sort of pick your 10 guys who are going to be accountable assistants to go on the road, and everyone else can stay at home. If you are getting older and you still love the coaching piece of it, and you don't want to go on the road as much because it's hard on you, it's hard on your family, it's hard, it's just difficult to do. Traveling, Tony, is a pain in the butt these days. I don't mean to tell you anything. Speaking of things getting slightly worse every year, the airline industry. Anyway, so, I think the expandable coaching staff, that proposal, which has not gone through yet, we did a morning show on that on Thursday morning this week. Tony and I did on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning feed. But if that goes through, I think that makes it likely, that maybe adds a year or two to how long I think Larry Johnson might be coaching at Ohio State. Because these guys stay to be coached by Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson is still viewed as one of the best to ever do what he does. And if he doesn't have to do the parts of the job that are more difficult, great. Maybe that makes it easier for him to stay for another few years. We've been hearing Larry Johnson retirement rumors since like Joey Bosa was on campus. So oh, Joey Bosa, Larry Johnson will never be there to coach the end of your career. And here we are through Joey Bosa and Nick Bosa and Chase Young and Zach Harrison and now JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. And it's like, oh, Edric Houston, Larry Johnson will never be there for the end of your career. Like, well, I don't know. Maybe. The track record is he continues to be at Ohio State. So until that changes, I'm not going to bet against that ever changing.
And not only recruits come to him, his old players come back and work with him at Ohio State. You know, you never know exactly who you're going to see, Chase Young or whomever just showing up, and you'll see them working with Larry Johnson. And that's the belief that they have in him. And there's plenty of testimony to that theory as well. Recruiting, Tom, top 100 linebacker TJ Alfred from the South Florida, we'll say Port St. Lucie, Vero Beach High School, is committing to somebody on Saturday. Ohio State, Miami, Florida State, Tennessee, and UCF, I believe, are his 5 favorites. We saw him last June at Ohio State. A very good relationship with James Laurinaitis. The Buckeyes are the huge favorite to land him, but he's a South Florida kid, so even if they do, you're going to have to hold on to him. But right now, Ohio State just has, I think, 9 commits, 7 on offense, 2 on defense. Alfred could become the 8th on defense, and then, Tom, the discussion becomes, has Ryan Day neglected the offensive side of the ball with recruiting?
It is wild how this is completely flipped from last year, because last year it was, I don't remember what exactly the numbers were, but it felt like they had 13 commits and like 11 were on offense, and everyone was like, they've forgotten to recruit the defense. And, now, okay, they have only a couple on offense and the defensive class is full. It's like, you have to pick one. You can't be mad about everything. If they have one too many of one and not enough of the other, you can't be mad about both directions there. This one certainly feels like one that is trending towards a good news for Ohio State coming up on Saturday. And, as you said, it is a South Florida recruitment. So, as they say, a commitment just means you're in their top 3 probably. But plenty of these, I know that people are sort of irritated / haunted / bothered by whatever the ones that have flipped. They have had plenty of them stick over the years. And sometimes there's some drama to them sticking. And guess what? Jeremiah Smith, there was a little bit of drama, and he's still at Ohio State and still has people quite excited. And so, good news. The drama no longer matters. It's fine. So it will get your blood pressure up in December, and then the guys who will stick, will stick, and the guys who flip to Miami will go play in the Pinstripe Bowl, and life will go on. And that's just kind of how it is. But yeah, Alfred would be a very big piece for this class, because you're looking, you look at the linebacker room right now, and it's Cody Simon, who's leaving after this year, Sonny Styles, who is, I don't know how this is possible, but draft eligible after this year, CJ Hicks, who's draft eligible after this year, Gabe Powers is draft eligible after this year. They've had guys who've transferred out of that room. They just lost 2 starters last year. You've got to really refill that unit. That's going to be a pretty important one for them. So yeah, if they can get a commitment from him and it sticks through signing day, that would be a very good thing for Ohio State.
I did see that Arvell Reese was one of the silver bullets of the day posted by Jim Knowles recently. That is a positive. But yeah, they already have one linebacker committed in Eli Lee from Akron-Hoban, kind of under the radar kid right now. I assume that will change. But is this going to be a situation where they play 2 linebackers? Do they bring in, is it just going to be a class of 2 linebackers, or will they, can you go more now, because you also have to expect to lose guys in the portal to the NFL. It will be interesting to see what they do there. It is a very big recruiting weekend in terms of visits, Tom. There is a visitor who, I'm going to spring this on you now, is the son of one of the South Florida Rolls, of the family Roll. Would you like to guess which of the Rolls this son, Jalen Roll, is of?
So I can choose Brian Roll. I can choose Myron Roll. Who else am I missing from the
Antrell Roll.
Antrell
Samari
Roll?
Roll.
Yeah. Oh man. I'm gonna go with the only Rhodes Scholar in the group and go with Myron Roll.
No. Samari Roll. Sorry.
No.
The oldest of the bunch, I believe. So that'll make you feel a little bit better. He played in like the late 90s in college. But yeah, so there are more roles coming, perhaps to Ohio State. But, they generally stick in Florida State and Miami generally have the market there. Brian Roll was one of the rare ones that came all the way north. He went so far north, Tom, after playing in the NFL, he played in Canada for a year. And then he's like, you know what? That's enough. That is too much north.
So Myron Roll, born in 1986, age 37 years, Tony. He played, obviously, was at Florida State, drafted by the Tennessee Titans of the NFL. Do you know what he's doing now? Myron Roll?
Brain surgery?
Neurosurgery, yes. So anytime you want to feel like, what have I really accomplished in my life? You want to Google Myron Roll, and then you'll feel so much better because it's like, I've done way more. That guy probably doesn't even have his own podcast. Like, come on.
I don't know. He couldn't even make it in the NFL.
We have so much in common, he and I.
Yeah. 2 peas in a pod. Some of the other names visiting this weekend: David Sanders, the top offensive tackle in the nation. Jamie French, who was the 5-star wide receiver that was committed to Alabama, decommitted. A lot of people thinking that he's going to end up at Ohio State. Vernell Brown, another South Florida Express receiver, is visiting. A lot of people think he's going to end up with Ohio State. London Merritt, the IMG defensive end. Dorian Brew is scheduled to be back. So a number of big names. Bo Jackson from the in-state. Will be interesting because I believe Jordan Davison is also expected to be here. How they handle the running back visits with no running backs coach. Ryan Day will probably be more hands-on because he is the running backs coach and now also the primary running back recruiter, I guess. We'll see how that goes. But just a really big weekend time, and we'll just dovetail into the Student Appreciation Day because you're going to have a ton of recruits families, players' families, and most importantly, the media, all ensconced, just crammed into the WAC. This feels, if you're not claustrophobic, you might get there based on how many people might be there on Saturday.
Yeah, that's always kind of a really, really full facility. It's like the sidelines before a big game at Ohio Stadium where it's like, what? Where did all of you people come from? This is too many people down here. It's always a fun practice because they keep it kind of lighthearted. They're not doing like super intense drill work. It's much more kind of like a, fun interactive thing. And it's a chance for students to go see practice and see guys up close. And it's a chance for, the players. We hear about players coming to practice and seeing how intense it is. This is not probably going to be one of those where it's going to be a super intense practice, but it's a good chance to see the atmosphere around practice. There's a little more energy in the building. There's a lot more people in the building. So, that's all. It's always kind of a fun thing. And it's a chance for us to see all these recruits up close. And because normally on a normal fall recruiting weekend, we see them inside the stadium. But on a spring recruiting weekend, if they're just visiting, we generally don't see them. So we'll get a chance to see all those guys inside the Woody on Saturday and get to see a little practice as well. So should come away with a lot of good content.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if there are any quote unquote depth chart changes from the last time we saw them, which would have been like March 7th or something, the first week of practice, the Tuesday and Thursday there. Is how often do we see Jeremiah Smith with the ones? Actually, just how much scrimmaging do we get to see? There'll be some I think there'll be different situational stuff, perhaps some red zone, some short yardage, just some moving up and down the field. With Emeka probably not getting as much work, everybody moves up a spot. So if Jeremiah Smith is already in the top 4, then you would expect him to be with the ones quite a bit. Good to see some of the other freshmen as well. We've heard Julian Sayin doing well. at quarterback, get to see some James Peoples and how much running they actually do with him and Sam Williams-Dixon. See if any of the O-line, the freshman O-line, have moved in to the too deep. This will be our first look really at Edric Houston. Can he get into top 6, top 5, even if he can beat somebody out? I don't see that happening just yet. But the defensive backs as well. Tom, it'll be an opportunity to see if wouldn't it be interesting if they did a black stripe removal in front of everybody?
I was trying to remember if they've ever done that. That feels like it's very intentionally done, not in front of people. I don't know quite why that is, because I'm sure that would get everyone all excited.
Mm-hmm.
And then, they put it out publicly, so it's not like there's, it's not like they're keeping some like super secret skull and bones ceremony or something away from the people. So, I don't know. They, for whatever reason, they just don't do that when even just the media is in there. But that would be interesting to see who else loses their stripe if someone loses their stripe. But I always feel like this is a good kind of midpoint of the spring where you sort of, okay, we have our initial impressions. Now let's see what's changed. And then this is going to be practice, 8, I think, something like that. So you're really literally quite directly in the middle of spring practice. So there'll be a good midway point to see how much has changed. And then we're back in there in like a week and a half, and we'll get to watch another one before the end of the spring, and then the spring game on the 13th. So it should be a lot of interesting stuff to come out of that practice. I'm sure we will have a ton of video and photos and all that good stuff of recruits and practice and drills and all that stuff.
Do you know, I'm looking for the Black Stripe draft results, and I cannot find it. So,
don't worry, shame. I have them because I'm not worried about the results this year.
It's a shame.
What would you like to know about the Black Stripe draft, Tony? Who had Jeremiah Smith, the only true freshman to lose it? Well, that would be me.
That's because I let you have that one.
You mentioned earlier Julian saying, someone who we're hearing a lot of good things about. I also have him. Who else do you have questions about, Tony? I'm happy to answer any questions.
Who do I have at 2 and 3?
You have Aaron Scott and Edric Houston at 2 and 3. Now, and I took Bryce West at 4, and then we almost immediately found out that Bryce West is then out for the spring, which really puts me at a disadvantage. But
you hate to see it.
We got to give you a chance somehow, Tony. I can't win this every year.
No, Tom, and you shouldn't. It's not fair to the people. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to you. Let's finish up. We got a couple of listener questions that I wanted to touch on. So let's go with those. Tom, I'll let you read them.
All right, from @CEBert2. So Lynn St. John was 80 for 33 years and got a building named after him. And Dick Larkin served for 24 years and got a building too. Gene Smith's been here for 19 years. Does Gene Smith get a building? Tony, that's a great question, and I think there's certainly an argument to be made for it. Do they build something new and name it after him? Do they rename something? I mean, Lord knows, Tony, they're doing plenty of construction around the Ohio State campus. So, Lynn St. John got a basketball arena. Dick Larkin's got a pool named after him. So, what do you name after Gene Smith?
Well, and they have all the buildings they need. Do you remember when Gene Smith announced his retirement, we went and did an emergency podcast out on like the other side of the Shoemaker complex, and you could just look around at all of these buildings that were built in his time. I say just like name that portion of campus like after him, like because if you're going to name a building after him, you've just lost money on who would have paid to have that name put on the building. So we have not started naming, there's no John Agriculture that has the naming rights of the agriculture campus. That's just actual agriculture. It's not a person. But, whether it's the Gene Smith Athletic Campus or something like that, where, you recognize him that way, because that is not what it used to look like before he got here in 2005.
The funny thing is, way back in the day, that was known kind of informally as Andyland. for former Ohio State athletic director Andy Geiger, who was there for when they started building out a lot of that stuff, and Bill Davis Stadium and Buckeye Field for the softball team, and Jesse Owens Stadium might have been an Andy Geiger era thing too, where the soccer team plays. But now the new tennis building, which is named for Ty Tucker, the head tennis coach for 25 years now. They've got the new lacrosse stadium there. They've got the new Covelli Center there. So yeah, you could name something like that. I was wondering, they're talking about building a new ice rink for the women's hockey team. Maybe you could do that. Frankly, I think the way the women's hockey team is playing, if they screw around with that for another couple of years, Ohio State women's hockey might win another national championship or two, and then it becomes the Nadine Muzzerall ice rink, which I don't, whoever puts in however much money, I think Nadine Muzzerall wins for biggest impact on the women's hockey program. So yeah, I think there's an argument, probably too soon. That's probably more of a later in her career honor, but I think there's an argument for that. Yeah, I think he has certainly done enough at Ohio State and been at Ohio State long enough that it would certainly be merited to name something after him. But as you said, there's a lot of the construction is done right now and everything sort of has a name. So yeah, I don't know what they would name after him, but we've heard there was sort of a hint of a new, there was a hint, Ross Bjork sort of hinted around the idea that they might be redoing the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. So, maybe there's something in there that's the Gene Smith, the, performance training center or whatever.
Yep.
All right, next one. From @PM Wilker. Everyone and their brother is raving about Jeremiah Smith, including you guys. If the Buckeyes treated him like he was Marvin Harrison Jr. as far as targets, etc., what's the prediction? 1,100 yards, 15 touchdowns?
No, because this is a 16-game season, as we've been talking about it. And the potential, and this is just all hypothetical, like we could just say if Marvin Harrison played 16 games, you can do it however you want. But the amazing thing about Marvin Harrison last year is he averaged 18 yards a catch. And that's not something that was done. Like Terry McLaurin averaged like 19 in 2018 with half of those catches. And, Devin Smith averaged 28 with half of those catches. Like Marvin Harrison had 67 catches and averaged 18 yards a catch. Like you don't necessarily see those. I don't think you've ever seen anything like that at Ohio State in terms of that many catches and that many yards per catch. I don't know that you can expect Jeremiah Smith to average 18 yards a catch with the number of targets that Marvin Harrison had. However, if the targeting is more accurate than it was last year, Tom, then maybe the catches go up. But if we're just saying Marvin Harrison would have put up 6 catches a game last year, he's at 5.5 and should have been more. But over a 16-game season, you're talking about like the same 95 catches that Jackson Smith and Jigba had in 2022 or 2021, and probably the same 1,600 yards that Jackson Smith and Jigba had, averaging he even averaged 16.9 yards a catch. So that's quite a bit for a slot guy. Tom, the easy answer here is 15. I guess it's 15 touchdowns. An easy answer, like 1,100 yards for absolute certainty. He would blow past that if they targeted him like they did Marvin Harrison, in my opinion.
The easy answer is I recognize a trap when I'm not going to step into it. This is encouraging a very irresponsible answer, and I will not fall for your trap, sir or madam, respectfully. Sure, if they were to target him as frequently as they targeted Marvin Harrison, sure, you can throw any kind of crazy numbers on there if you want to. They're not going to. Part of last year was Emeka Egbuka missed some time. He missed 3 games, plus got hurt in the middle of a game and missed, I think, a little bit of time in another one. You had Julian Fleming, who was just not as much of a receiving threat as the other guys. So you're not, and Marvin Harrison is literally Marvin Harrison. You're talking about a true freshman and saying, well, what if he was ready to be a top 5 NFL draft pick right now? And it's like, let's let him get him through spring ball first before we talking like that, please. Sure, if you did that and there was no, freshman wall that we see guys hit all the time in their true freshman year, like if you turn off fatigue and you turn off injuries and you turn off the defensive staff being able to watch film and recognize that this is happening before the game starts and the game plan around it. Like if you turn off all that stuff, sure, you're gonna come up with some wild numbers and you can end up with 1,600 yards receiving and 20 touchdowns and break every record and all. Guess what? Like, weather is going to be on this season in the Big Ten. Like, sometimes it's going to be windy or rainy or snowing, and sometimes you're going to have, we've talked a bunch about this team being, running the ball more and being a more run-heavy offense, and we still have not seen Devin Brown and Will Howard throwing, with an actual defense going up against them. So what is that going to look like? We don't know. All the health stuff, all the fatigue stuff, all of this stuff is like, as a purely academic exercise, yeah, you can get some wild numbers there. I want to be super clear here that should not be your expectation this year for the about 7 reasons I just listed. Let's pump the brakes a little bit on everything. He's going to be very good. We have already started moving the Overton window of acceptable discussion to he may start the first game. Like, that is now within the Overton window of acceptable discussion on this show. That's fine. He's not going to get targeted as much as Marvin Harrison did last year.
Tom, but what is more likely to happen for Jeremiah Smith this year, in your opinion? 0 yards receiving or 1,500 yards receiving?
That's it, Tony. That's a question somewhere a monkey paw is curling right now, and I don't think you want to put that out there into the universe. So let's.
Fair enough. We'll let Tom back out on that one, plead the fifth, or any other way he can get out of that. So that will do it, Tom.
I'm pleading the third. Get out of my house. Little constitutional humor for you out there.
Tom with the bylaws. Gotta love them. Anyway, anything else? No, I'm not even going to ask because I don't want to hear about, oh, well, yes, one other thing. 10.2.4.6 says, good night, everybody. But we do want to ask that you go ahead and hit the thumbs up on this video if you have not yet, if you're watching on video. If you're listening to it via podcast, go ahead and throw us a 5-star rating and review. We would appreciate that. And of course, the absolute best way to support us and what we do is become a member over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. For the, as Tom would say, the price of a lazy chain store pizza. You know, those lazy people over at Domino's can't do nothing right. But we would, of course, appreciate you to check that out, both Domino's and Buckeye Huddle. You can check us out on the message board as always. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.